Hello everyone, it's Reese here and welcome to this. It is my first film roundup video of 2026. All the new watches that I watched in January, a bit of a smaller one for me. And you may notice that we've changed the style as well. I'm trying to do these things a little bit more professionally, a little more smoothly. So if you have any comments about it, if you sort of like how it looks or you don't, please do let me know. I'm very keen on feedback. And something else I've introduced as well is a little summary bit at the start of the video. So before I tell you about the films I've watched, I thought I'd break down some of the things. So I'd break down how many new watches there are in the month. So this month I watched 8 films for the first time. And then, as I've mentioned in a previous video, I'm also doing the 1001 movies to see before you die challenge, because of list updates and stuff. And the total is now 1,259. And I thought I would sort of have a nice thing to sort of keep track. So as you see, I'm sort of almost a third of the way there. And then lastly, but certainly not least, at the bottom, you see my handle on Instagram and on Letterboxd, sorry. So if you fancy taking part in the quest as well, if you fancy joining me, following me on Letterboxd, connecting with me there, so you can sort of keep really up to date on the films, so I can see what you're watching as well. Please do. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to sort of share these experiences. So let me begin. So I watched 8 new films this term, and the first film I watched was essentially a lingering thing from Christmas. Jingle Bell Heist. It's sort of one of Netflix's sort of every year they have a Christmas film that a few new Christmas films that sort of hit the headlines. Hot Frosty was it last year? The Night Before Christmas, Vanessa Hudgens, and so a bunch of them. And this was one of this year's one. It was, so as I mentioned in previous videos, I don't mind this sorts of Christmas films. I think they're fun enough, and you have to accept them for what they are, but it's all good. Anyway, this film stars Olivia Holt as an American who is working at a department store, and there is another guy who's sort of this father. He's sort of an ex-con who's sort of providing for his daughter and his ex-partner, and essentially through contrivances. Contrivances is very much the way of sort of discussing these films. Through contrivances, and they wind up having a plan to steal from Maxwell Sterling, an obnoxious millionaire who sort of runs the department store in which Olivia Holt's character works. They do it on Christmas. This is, and the millionaire is played in a surprise turn. I was quite delighted to see him by Peter Serafinowicz. If you're a fan of British comedy alumni, Lucy Punch also crops up in quite a substantial role. So this film, it was, yeah, I mean, it is the sort of generic kind of comedy thing, kind of generic Netflix hallmarky Christmas film. But I'd say sort of a little step above. Olivia Holt is always good. I like her as presence. Peter Serafinowicz, Lucy Punch are sort of comedy stars, and sort of they've been around the block. These are sort of not sort of major American names, but they are big names, and they sort of do give the film a bit more sort of class to it. It's quite fun as well. There's lots of fun moments, and then sort of towards the end, the final sort of 30 minutes or so, the film gets very twisty, very complicated. I don't know all of it lands, but I liked it. I like the ambition. I like it's not sort of just a generic misunderstanding and then they fall in love. And there are some set pieces that are really actually quite good. And there's one where the Hulk character and the male character whose name I forget, they sort of have a thing with earphones, and sort of having a bit of banter there, and that's quite good fun. I quite like that. Earphones, earpieces. But interestingly, for a film that sort of is your generic kind of hallmark Netflix Christmas garbage, it's actually the romance element that I found least interesting. I didn't overly find the male lead that interesting, and the fact that he is sort of caring for a daughter, he's looking after a partner, and gave the chance for sort of a potential different sort of conclusion to these stories. It doesn't often come along. The romances are sort of written in the stars the moment the couple appear on stage, on screen. That didn't happen here. You get no real sense, really, that there is a dynamic between these two for much of the runtime, and I would say that sort of the film ends in the way that you're probably expecting it will. I'm not saying anything, but you know what these films are like. I didn't overly like it. I thought there was a potential to do something really, really different, and they kind of squandered it in truth. So it was sort of mixed. It was fun enough. Probably one of the better cheap Christmas films I've seen. I'm saying cheap, but yes, that's sort of my view of the film. There is that, average, distinctly average. Let's leap back. So one of the films that I watched as a result of it being on my list, the 1001 film list that I mentioned, Bad Day at Black Rock. So this film stars Spencer Tracy as a one-armed man who arrives at the town of Blackrock. He doesn't arrive at the town of Blackrock. What is the town called? Is it called Blackrock? These are a long time ago, you see. He arrives at the town. No, it is Blackrock, yes. And sort of the entire town is sort of suspicious of what's going on. This is the first time in quite a long time that anyone has got off the train at this town, and so they want to know what's happening. It eventually transpires that he's looking for a man who he knew, he has a personal connection with as a result of the Second World War, and then sort of as he probes about where this man is going, he discovers a bunch of secrets that the town is sort of not particularly keen on letting be unearthed. They're not particularly keen on letting it come to light. So this is kind of essentially sort of some sort of neo-noir western film. It's kind of I really enjoyed this. So this is a sort of a punchy little film. It's not an hour and a half long. It's not that long, and it's a really compelling watch. Watching sort of the Spencer Tracy character get under the skin of the people in the town, watching him make allies and make enemies, and trying to figure out what's going on and sort of remain alive. And over it, there's this kind of lingering air of sort of how communities have been damaged. This community in particular has been damaged by sort of remnants of war and the sort of reorganisation of American society after the war. It is, I believe, one of the first films that talks about how sort of Japanese Americans were discriminated against in World War II. Sort of famously known for that as kind of a sort of one of its points of historical significance. But yes, this is a film essentially sort of a film of suspicion, a film of paranoia, and it feels tight. And the town is hot; it feels warm. Sort of director John Sturges and his camera, it makes Blackrock feel like a dangerous, real place. I'm genuinely on the edge of my seat stuff. So as we enter the climax, to see if the Spencer Tracy character is going to get out alive or not. And I say this with sort of no degree of certitude. And I really liked that. I really liked, and there are elements where it was happy to embrace the darkness. The fate of one sort of character towards the end of the film is sort of a great example of that. But yeah, no, this is sort of a very underrated. I think this is a film that I'd certainly never heard of, and would greatly recommend if you're into sort of that sort of crime and noir atmosphere, or sort of the revisionist western. And the film probably falls under that purview, although somewhat more loosely than things like Unforgiven or High Plains Drifter or films like that. And to a very different beast entirely, another film from my list, and a film that I knew I needed to watch as a scholar of French cinema, but often held off because of the film's length. And that is Abel Gance's Napoleon, or to give it the full title, Napoleon vu par Abel Gance. This is a film that is essentially sort of an early sort of biopic, depicting the early days of Napoleon Bonaparte. So when he is at school, when he sort of re-encounters his family in Corsica, when he sort of leads a campaign to success in Italy, And then as the French Revolution goes on, as the terror goes on, sort of how he responds. We don't get into this too much on account of the fact that the idea, as I understand, is that the film was going to be sort of exhibited in a number of parts. The idea was that this is one of a few pieces, and that never happened. So this is sort of part of the Napoleon story. I say the revolutionary part where he encounters as well Josephine and marries her. There's the film's a lot, so the film is 5.5 hours long, and you think that's bad. Hold on, we've got something else coming later. It's a really gripping watch in the moments where it's particularly gripping. Albert Dieudonné plays Napoleon, and he is a really compelling, interesting figure. It's interesting. A lot of this film is sort of, despite being a silent film, is quite based around music, specifically the writing of the Marseillaise. The time, according to scholarship on this, so when the film was first exhibited in 1927, they had sort of an actual singer come to the premiere and perform the song as it is performed in the film. And there were some great moments as well, some sort of very fantastic, sizable battle sequences. And there are moments that are a little confusing, and I think in no small part because essentially the film was going to be multiple parts and wasn't multiple parts. So there was no payoff for some of these moments. Most importantly of all, a moment where we sort of encounter for one scene a young version of Horatio Nelson. So stuff like that. This is an epic, and it is full of techniques that, if we are honest, are not particularly inspiring or unusual now. Some of the point of view shots and some of the camera movements, but were sort of incredibly inventive and compelling for the time. And the most interesting of which, I had no idea this was going to happen, is a scene towards the end of the film, where essentially the idea was that 3 reels of the film would be played at the same time in a sort of a row, to make essentially a long widescreen battle sequence. This is a technique that's often considered sort of the most significant, the most innovative of the filmmaking techniques seen in Napoleon. You lose a little bit of the effect when you're watching it elsewhere, but sort of it's fascinating thing. Napoleon, I'm not going to lie to you and say that sort of sitting through a 5.5 hour watch is an easy one. If you're into silent film and you want to see sort of significant silent films, this is very much one to watch. This is on the 1,000 film list for a reason. So it would come recommended to a particular audience is what I'll say. We remain on the list, and this was a choice I was encouraged to watch by Mrs. Goodall. Moulin Rouge. Baz Luhrmann's film in which young writer Ewan McGregor falls in love with the cabaret star Satine, played by Nicole Kidman. She's engaged to a duke, sort of a dandyish performance by Richard Roxburgh, and sort of looked after by her essentially pimp, and played by Jim Broadbent. I saw a little bit of this film one night when I was too sort of not in the mood to see it. It was a weird film. It's weird. It was put on for me to watch by my partner specifically because it is weird. But what I found is once it gets past all the sort of the weird chunks that come in the opening sort of 30 minutes or so, I really quite got into it. This is sort of what I'm saying is I don't want a Baz Luhrmann film where Baz Luhrmann doesn't quite get in the way, or the frenetic editing, the sort of bizarre things where random fairies rock up. I don't get it. But on the whole, I really enjoyed the film. And I think, yeah, for me, once it gets past the sort of scene where they're all in an elephant singing to the tune of the can, that's probably for me where the film really starts to pick up. There's some gorgeous numbers in here that work so well. You'd never imagine. Like, Someday I'll Fly Away. It was not from the film. You would never perceive it. I particularly like the idea that they've transformed the Madonna's Like a Virgin into effectively a villain song full of some of the weirdest camp I've ever seen. Um, I was just baffled thinking about it. And this is a film that is highly stylized. And again, I think it's something that's worth knowing if you're going into it. It's a highly stylized movie, and stylized in such a way that will not be for everyone. Highly stylized, half a musical, um, but if you're in for it, it's really fun. It really is. And there's some, I mean, the choreography, the performances, the actual sort of arrangement of the music and stuff. It is gorgeous. It's really gorgeous. I mean, it does this so well. And there are elements of the film kind of it kind of um, is a lot. I think you got to be in a mood to watch it, and you've got to know what you're watching. But I I had fun with it after the nonsense, after the sort of serious nonsense at the start stopped. I really got into it. So this would, yeah, I really enjoyed it. What more can I say? What more can I say? Um, the docks of New York. So I return to the world of um, silent cinema again, and this is Joseph von Sternberg's film 1929, about a stoker on a ship. He encounters a young woman who he thinks is sort of in the middle of sort of an attempt on her life, and saves her, and then their relationship emerges out of that. And this was this is where I lose this is where I lose everyone. But I didn't overly love this film. And say things, it looks gorgeous. It sort of looks fantastic. And actually, sort of these scenes in the waterfront. Um, it it looks great, and again, it's using some sort of very highly innovative camera techniques. And there's a lot to do here, with sort of fusing movement with sort of the space, as opposed to using sort of editing cuts to sort of create meaning. And it's a style really that kind of, in a sense, sort of resembles German expressionist films, things like Nosferatu or The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. Uh, Not anywhere near as overt, but this sense of the mood, the sense of space here, um, yeah, works really well. And I didn't overly love the love story, and I didn't particularly get invested in it. Isn't sort of my honest truth, and it is kind of a film. Again, it's very sort of visually and technically impressive. I didn't find the plot overly interesting, in part I think because it's not meant to be. I think Sternberg said this himself at the time. The plot was not important. It's kind of the characters being sort of representatives of the conditions that people like them would have been in at the time. Um, Nonetheless, The Docks of New York was not for me. Very much not for me. We continue in the silent train, though, no pun intended, to the world once again of Abel Gance. I was in the mood of getting some of these long films off my list, and there's one more incredibly long film to do. When will we do that? Who knows? And this was Abel Gance's La Roue, meaning the wheel, is what it means. Yeah, so this is a film, another sort of 5.5 hour-ish one, about a railway worker, a guy called Sisu, who sort of adopts an orphan girl. He sort of encounters her after a tragedy, adopts the girl and raises her alongside his son. However, as the girl grows, both the son and the father fall in love with the woman, and then opposite to this, there is also sort of a rich person who's trying to sort of win the woman round. Now, I mentioned the techniques in Napoleon, but really this is where it really comes out. This is where it really comes to play. Things like sort of shot superimpositions. There's a famous shot in which Sisyphus looks at his hand, sort of sees and goings on inside, and the shot has been overlaid. But things like that really are highly, highly impressive. And again, Gauns's use of light is used sort of quite rapid cuts to be able to pull everything together and make it make sense. It's all very technically impressive stuff, and the guy evidently clearly knew what he was doing behind the camera. What I would say though is that there's not too much to the film. There's not, so meaning is made here, but I don't think there's sufficient meaning or mood made. Sounds nice off my tongue. To hold your attention for 6.5 hours. It is a tough ask at the best of times. It's a tough ask for me. I watched the film and there were certain elements I really loved. There's this sort of a scene involving a mountain, which is incredibly tragic. A scene towards the end of the film in which Sisyphus has acquired some form of impairment that I won't mention. Learns to coexist with his daughter. So there's a lot of good bits here. There's lots of good bits. I struggle a little bit with how long the film is, but again, as with Napoleon, know what you're getting into, prepare yourself for it, and you might very much enjoy. One last point on Gauns is that I, as you know, am an academic. I think there's space for an excellent book on Abel Gauns, and there's a few about his work on Napoleon specifically, but I think this would be a general one. I know one book does exist, I don't overly rate it, so when I say I think there's space for a book, I mean there's space for a good book, is all I can say. Right, now film 7, Pick Up on South Street, which I watched on the 25th of January. So essentially a Cold War noir film, really, starring Richard Widmark as a pickpocket. He steals a purse from a woman on a train. Transpires the woman is an unwitting courier for the communists, and who want the money, who want the contents of the purse back. So too do the police who are observing the purse, and the woman want the contents for themselves. In the middle of this is Richard Widmark, who is a thief who I think she's sort of trying to get on with his life. And also cropping up is Thelma Ritter as Mo, a woman who kind of knows all the secrets of the area and will sort of exchange them for a price. A character that I didn't overly love, but who sort of she delivers the best scene in the film by far. In which she, no, I'm not going to say. I'll let it be a surprise for everyone to watch it. Who's going to watch it, because it is really good. Yes, it's a fascinating film. It's sort of a noir and every character's under suspicion and all that. But also, the characters are very anti-communist. You can tell this is sort of an American film from the 50s. There are characters here who are hating the communists. Again, a fascinating time capsule. And this is very tense, very taut, and the fight sequences seem real. And they don't seem sort of staged in the way that kind of TV fights can be staged. So there's a real sort of brutality, there's a real tension to it, and that I really, really quite liked. I really recommend this one. It's dark, but it's only dark when it has to be. It knows the restraint, and really that's kind of the trick. That is really, really the trick. Yes. Again, I don't think this is 90 minutes, so what I would say is, if you're inclined, give it a go. Give it a go. As compared to my last watch of January, this film, Necrology. So a film that I watched for a chapter on the French anthology film that I'm writing currently. And the film is a collection of 5 short films and then a wraparound segment in which a blogger annoys the old gravekeeper of a cemetery while he sort of breaks in to take pictures and whatnot, And thus follows thereafter 5 stories of horror crafted by some of France's young talents. Some of these sequences are not very good, some of them are excellent. I quite like the Duckman one, and the one with the one with the l'œil de Tel, the eye of Tel at the end, is really high atmospheric in a way that the other ones aren't. Through choice, nothing wrong with that. So yes, there's a lot going on in the film, as with any anthology film. Some of it is likely to be garbage, some of it is not. What I will say is that even if you don't get to the films, there is a wonderful performance by Jean-Claude Dreyfus as the gravekeeper, as the man who sort of knows all the secrets. He's fantastic every moment he's on screen. He sort of holds your eye. He is sort of so dramatic and funny and serious at the same time, and I very, very much rate that and like that. Yes, what I would say is, playing. It's tough with anthology films. How do you recommend them? How do you rate them? If one bit is good but the rest of it is crap, what do you do? What do you do? And in the end, I'm not likely to watch this again, in truth. But there may be stuff to enjoy here. The films are nifty and they're short enough. And there's one featuring an old fellow who accidentally kills a woman and releases her pet, a guy called Pozu. I will say nothing, but sort of the effects on Pozu are incredibly fantastic. Lots to love here. There are some sequences that I don't think quite landed, and this is the risk of anthology films, but there you go. Nicology, my last new watch of January. So thank you all very much for watching here. I hope this was enjoyable. I hope this was interesting. Please do, as I say, share your letterbox or share your list below. If you are behind, if you are a fan of the video, please do comment below. Comment below what you watched in January that's new, and make sure to like, make sure to subscribe, make sure to ring the bell, so you can be notified whenever I upload new content. Thank you so much for watching. As I say, I'm hoping to get some feedback on this style of presentation, so please do let me know. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.